welcome to our web series. This is a new month, and so we are starting a new topic. This month we're talking about how to bake your turkey. Those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, you know how delicious turkey can be at Thanksgiving time, but also how difficult it can be to cook if you don't do all the right steps in the right order and really, take your time. We liken this to the writing process. When you're given that final project you have to do for the semester, it's going to be very, very similar to all the things you have to do with your turkey. So we're here to talk to you each week about the different stages of that process and how looking at it like you would a turkey will help you make sure that you succeed. This first week, we're going to talk about picking out your turkey. Before you even get started with the cooking process, you have to make sure you have the turkey in hand to do it. So it's important to make sure you do a good job with picking it out. The part of the writing process that we liken this to is reading a prompt to make sure you understand what the assignment guidelines are, and then choosing a topic from there so that you are fully equipped to then begin the actual writing process. So when you're trying to think about Thanksgiving and picking out your turkey and what things you need to keep in mind to do so, you don't just go into the grocery store and pick out any random old turkey, right? You need to make sure you've thought it through and that you choose the very, very perfect one for your Thanksgiving feast. A few questions you would need to consider to make sure you have the right turkey is, when do you need to have the turkey by? So when do you need to go shopping? Because if you go too early, then your turkey's just sitting in your freezer, which isn't good. If you wait until too late, then you might not have the best selection of turkeys because they get pretty picked over time. And you need to make sure you give it time to thaw out if you buy frozen turkey. So you need to make sure you give yourself plenty of time to actually use the turkey for your Thanksgiving feast, but not too much time either, because then the turkey could get a little stale. This is very similar to the writing process because you will have a deadline for when you have to turn in that paper by. And if you get started too late, you may not have time to really thoroughly take the time you need to do all the steps to make sure that the draft is as strong as possible. Likewise, if you start too early, then you might lose steam. It's very possible. A lot of people can get writer's block if they have too much time and they don't know, they don't have that pressure to push them to make choices. So it's important that you don't start too early and you also don't start too late when you are beginning the writing process, which is very similar to when you need to have your turkey. Another question that you need to consider is, who is going to eat your turkey? Who's going to be there for Thanksgiving dinner? Therefore, how big should that turkey be? Are you going to have a whole bunch of people? You have a nice big family and they always come out to enjoy Thanksgiving. Well, in that case, you'd probably need the full turkey, legs and everything, to make sure that you have enough meat to feed everybody. If you have a smaller family, or maybe you don't really have any family in the area, like myself, and so it's really just your immediate family, you don't need the whole big turkey for that celebration. So you can maybe just go with a turkey breast, for example, so it's a smaller portion size. So it's important to know what the scope of your writing project is so that you aren't doing too much, but you're also not doing too little, and you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing. It's very important to know page length, the amount of research you need to do, all of those different things. It's very, very important. You also need to think about, if, depending on the people who are going to be there, and enjoying your Thanksgiving meal, if they have flavor preferences. Some people really like a smoked turkey. Some people like a more natural, basic turkey. Other people like it to be, infused with gravy or, whatever other flavors turkey comes in. Some people have different preferences. And so you really have to know who's going to be eating the turkey so that you can make sure you get the right kind. This is very similar in the writing process to knowing who your audience is and making sure that you are approaching this project with that audience in mind so that you choose a topic that is going to be interesting to them, relevant to them, and something that is going to be in scope for what you're being asked to do. So making sure you have the right flavor to your assignment is important. And then also consider if you need any other ingredients while you're out shopping. So if while you're shopping, you need to get vegetables because you stuff your turkey with vegetables, or you need to make sure you buy the gravy packet because it doesn't come with this turkey. Sometimes turkey comes with the gravy packet. Sometimes you don't need to buy it separately. Sometimes you need to buy bread because you make your own dressing or stuffing. So it's important to know what other ingredients you need to make sure that your Thanksgiving meal is a success. In the writing process, you may be asked to have other assignments that go along with that final project. Maybe you have to do an annotated bibliography, or you have to write an abstract. Maybe you have to submit a thesis statement early on. Maybe that with the paper you need to also submit a reflection so that your instructor sees how you considered this project. So there might be other pieces that go along with the project that you have to consider and make sure that they're on your radar so that you're keeping track of them at the same time that you're working on your paper. It's very, very important that you do all this work to know what you're being asked to do so that you better understand how you can actually achieve it. So all of these questions about picking out your turkey and making sure you have the right one definitely pertain to getting started with big writing projects too. So from here, I'm going to take a little time and walk you through how to read a prompt for an assignment and making sure that you understand what's being asked of you so that you can then make the big choices about what your topic's going to be and how you schedule all the different aspects of the writing process so that you get done by the time that the due date rolls around. So let's jump into looking at a prompt. Okay, so this is a prompt for a class here at UIS English 234. It's Introduction to Film. So this is one of the papers that students are asked to write when they're in this class. Now I will note here that this is not the final project. This is just one of the regular papers that they write throughout the course of the semester. But the prompt is a very good one here to look at different expectations an instructor has for different writing assignments. When you look at a prompt, they're all going to be formatted completely differently. Some of them will have the stuff at the top, some of them will have an assignment written out, others will have it formatted completely different. And so some of them are rubric based and not an actual assignment sheet. So it's very important to get a lay of the land first and foremost by seeing where stuff's located. On this one, you can see we have the name of the class at the top, the title of the assignment here, due dates and word counts and those sorts of things, and then what they're being asked to do in the actual assignment written out there. It's only one page, it's short, but hopefully all the information is here so we know what we're supposed to do. So if you look at this first section, you can see that there's a due date right there at the top, so you know exactly how much time you have between now and then to complete it. Today is the 1st, and so we have almost a month to complete this assignment, which is hopefully plenty of time. The next thing that's listed on here is the length. Some instructors will list length by page number, so you need to write a 4 to 6 page paper. Others will list by word count. So in this case, we have one by word count where you have to write between 500 and 750 words. Most instructors are going to be very particular about that length, and if you turn in anything less than that, whether it's pages or words, you will get docked points for it. So it's very important that you meet the word count at its minimum. Some instructors aren't as picky about going over the page length or the word count, but some are. Some actually will take points off if you go too long with your paper. So it's very important if it doesn't specify here that, do not in any way, shape, or form go over 1,000 words or something like that. If it doesn't say that here, you might want to check with your professor about if they're particular about going over on the word count too. Most students are like, oof, I can just get to those 500 words, I'll be good. But you'd be surprised how easy it is to actually go over depending on what the assignment is you're being asked to do. The next piece on here is the grade. You can see that there's 10% of the final cumulative score. That's important to know so that you know how much of your grade will be affected by this paper. 10% is a pretty big chunk, all things considered. Other final projects might be worth as much as 25 or 30% of the final grade. So it's important to know how much is on the line, how much is at stake with any writing project that you undertake. This one also lists submission requirements, so you have to submit this paper to Blackboard. This also lists how you should label the file. This is important because if you don't follow these guidelines exactly, you might lose points because you didn't name your file, and that's a silly thing to lose points on. So it's important to keep track, and if you're being asked to do anything like this, that you do it. Just to show you, if it says label the file this, you can just copy that, go to File, in your Word document when you're actually going to write your paper. You go to File, then Save As. You want to put it somewhere where you can find it. So in this case, we have on the desktop. We have on the desktop, we can place it, and so you can actually just paste, copy paste in the name of the thing, and then just change that to your last name. And then you have the name of the document saved in the proper way, so that the instructor doesn't dock you points for not having the right name. So that's important. Keep that in mind. Now, submit to Blackboard is a little vague. So unless you're very clear about what that means, you might check with your instructor about where on Blackboard do I submit this. Is it in the course materials tab? Is it in somewhere else, that so that you know exactly where you're supposed to be turning materials in if it's not expressly laid out here on the prompt. All right, so obviously all of this information is important. So you can highlight it, you can circle it, you can underline it, you can put a big squiggly line around it just so you know, hey, this stuff here is important. I am in a Word document here, so it's easy enough for me to manipulate, but if you get it in hard copy, so if you're actually given a printed version in your class, then you can take that and actually just write all over it, highlight it, and do the same sorts of things I'm doing here. But it is important to mark up your prompt so that you know where all the important pieces are. Anything else in addition that you might need to know, you can write on the side. So like if your instructor says, hey, submit to Blackboard, in the course materials tab, you can write off to the side, draw an arrow and say, in the course materials tab. So you can actually take notes so that you are even clearer about what you're being asked to do. It's very, very important. Okay, so if we move down to the assignment section, this is where you're actually being told what you're being asked to do in this paper. So if we look at this, this is what it is asking for. You will complete a 500 to 750 word popular review of a full-length feature film. So this being the first sentence, let's unpack it a little bit. So we see the word count here, the 500, 750 words. So that's said a second time, so we know that's important. We will want to maybe highlight that because we know it's important, and it's the same as up here. Popular review, so that's sort of the genre of the type of paper you're being asked to write. I might highlight that a different color because I don't exactly know what that means yet. It's not as clear as 500, 750 words. I might highlight a different color, underline it, or circle it to make sure that I really do understand what that is before I start getting ready to work on the paper. But you're writing a review of a full-length feature film. That might also be important, so I'm going to highlight that the same color. Okay, so the next sentence, you will write a review on a film currently in the theater or one you rent through a video rental store or view via Netflix, YouTube, Vimeo, or other online media screening websites. Okay, so you have to see something either in the theater or at home. So you can kind of see anything. That's kind of good to know. So you might add on, or you might draw an arrow and say, see anything even at home. Because it doesn't necessarily say that. It just lists out the ways that you can view it, but you can watch Netflix at home in your pajamas. So, you can write that and say, to clarify what that means. In the next sentence, the film should be something you have not seen prior to taking this class, but can be fiction, nonfiction, experimental, avant-garde, or any other genre. Okay, so the film should be something you have not seen prior to taking this class. That's important. So we're going to highlight that. It's an important parameter that is specifying the scope and the nature of this project. If this sentence wasn't in here, you could go pick your favorite movie you've seen a million times. But because this is here, it's limiting you as far as what topic you could choose. So that's important information that we will need to know, so we're going to highlight it. But it can be fiction, nonfiction, experimental, avant-garde, or any genre. So that's not necessarily something we would need to highlight. It's pretty clear that you can choose anything, as long as it's something you've not seen before. Okay, so the next paragraph, hopefully it's going to go into even more detail. The important thing to note about this assignment is that it is a popular review. So there's this word again, so we're going to highlight it again. And then hopefully this is going to explain. This is not an academic analysis essay, but rather a chance for you to try your hand at a more civic form of critique. So this is kind of just defining what that means, so we're going to highlight that. To familiarize yourself with this type of piece, read through some reviews on popular news and media websites or in print magazines and newspapers. It does then go on to say that on Blackboard I have attached a UIS students review for you to look at. And so I'm going to highlight that a different color because that tells me, hey, I need to go look this up. I'm going to go check that paper out because if the instructor has put an example out there for us to look at, that means that it's probably going to show us exactly what sorts of things we should be including in this paper, sort of what the scope of it should be, how to write a good paper. So if you are offered an example essay, always, always, always look at it. It's very important. But then the prompt does go on to say that I have also amassed a group of links to help get you started. So there's a bunch of links on Blackboard, so we can highlight that too. So you say a group of links to help get you started. We'll highlight that green to remember to go look it up. One of the most popular online websites for film reviews is Rotten Tomatoes. So I will highlight that also to know to go look that up. Where both average Joes and established journalists publish their thoughts on current and past flicks. Others include, and then it gives us a bulleted list of a bunch of different places. So I can highlight those because we can go look those up if we want to try to find even more examples. So this is great. We've been giving a lot of information about how to go about writing this popular review, what that means, and so to do that we'll have to just look up examples. That's very useful. It does say at least look at one or two of the sites to better understand the genre of the film review. And then it lists out a bunch of questions. So we'll highlight this in blue again because we're talking about the film review and what's being asked to do, what you're being asked to do. So who is the audience of these pieces? How does this affect their tone? So looking at the review to help us better understand how to write it. These are things we have to figure out. So who's the audience of these film reviews? How does this affect the tone of the review? What are the different parts of it? How are they organized? How much or how little of the film do they give away? So do they have spoilers or not? And how positive or negative are they? Is there a limit to how negative an author can be? These are all things we'll have to suss out, we'll have to figure out when we go in and look at some examples. And from there, we can then determine for ourselves when we write the review how far we can take these different things. So this is the very end of the prompt. We have a little bit of information here. So once you've familiarized yourself with this type of article and have viewed your feature film, write your review in a Microsoft Word document. So there's some nuts and bolts about what we're being asked to do. So again, we'll make that the yellow because that's sort of the nuts and bolts stuff. Times New Roman 12-point font. Again, some specifics. Include your last name and the page number in the header and center the title of your review. Below your name, the class, and the date. So there's more nuts and bolts. Feel free to include screenshots from the film if appropriate, but know that these have no bearing on the final word count, so you can put screenshots from the film. I'm going to put that in yellow, I guess, because it is sort of nuts and bolts. Remember to include a works cited page with the film you watched, as well as any supporting materials you reference, and cite appropriately using MLA. Okay. So that's all sort of stuff just to keep in mind once we start writing. So it's very, very helpful to have so that we make sure we're following all the guidelines. All right, so from here we have a whole bunch of stuff highlighted and we have notes taken on all these different things. I'm going to smush that together so we can see it all on one page. So you can see there's a whole bunch of things highlighted. Now if you leave it here, you save it, and you're like, great, I'll write this next week, and then you open this up again next week, are you going to remember what these highlights mean? You might not. So in that case, you might want to create a legend for yourself or a key. So if we do this, you might say yellows are nuts and bolts, basic information about what I'm being asked to do. So we can highlight that the yellow color because that's what that one is. We might look at places to look up what a review is. That's the green. And then blue is information to figure out before writing. And so this will make it blue because that's to mimic that color. So this is our key. And we're going to not highlight that. So from here, then you can look at this next week when you're like, hey, I have a week. I don't have to start writing right now. So I'll save this. And then when you come back to it later, you're not at a loss for what the different notes were that you took on here. So these are just some tips and tricks for how to read a prompt and make sure you know exactly what's being asked of you. If anything is ever unclear, if you're ever not sure about something, like maybe the amount of sources that you need, maybe it says cite appropriately using MLA style, but it doesn't say anything about required sources or anything like that, then you will need to figure that out before you get started. If it says 6 to 12 pages, well, that's a really big range of pages. So maybe your instructor would really would accept a paper that's only 6 pages. Maybe they really prefer something that's 10 pages. You never know. So if there's ever anything that you're like not sure about, or you really feel like you need clarification, make sure you ask your instructor. Don't just assume that because it's not listed on here that you don't have to do it, especially with things like research and citations and things like that. You really have to make sure you know everything that you're being asked to do so that you can do them. So in picking out your turkey, making sure you know exactly what kind of turkey, how big of a turkey, when to get the turkey, and all those things. You need to make sure you know the scope of your assignment so that you follow all of the guidelines and don't lose points unnecessarily because you didn't have all the words that you needed, or you didn't submit it in the right place or at the right time. So, make sure you're doing your due diligence with that. From here, though, you need to pick your topic so that you can actually start the writing process. And as far as choosing your topic, there's no right, wrong answer to that, but some general rules of thumb with picking a topic. You'll want to choose something you're interested in, if at all possible. So for this prompt, you're being asked to see a movie you've never seen before. Well, do you have a list of movies you've never seen and you've always wanted to, but you've just never found the time? This would be the time to go seek out that movie and go watch it so you can use it for this paper. If there's that movie that just came out in theaters and you're like, oh, I know I want to see that, then hey, lump that in with writing this paper about it too. So try to find something that you're really interested in to write about so that it's going to work in your favor. You also want to make sure you choose something that is not too broad and not too narrow. So for example, you for this project wouldn't want to go choose a new TV series and watch the first season of it, because that's not what you're being asked to do. That's too broad. That's too much material. You've been asked to look at a feature film, a singular full-length film. So you would go see one film. You also wouldn't go see a short film. You wouldn't go look up a short film that's only like 20 minutes long on YouTube, and there's some great ones out there, because you're being asked to look at a full-length film. If you're not sure what a full-length film is, that would be a question for your instructor because it's not listed here on the prompt. So you need to be sure that whatever your topic is, that you're following all the guidelines with how broad or how narrow the topic should be. If you need a particular point of view, so if you're supposed to look at this from a feminist point of view or through politics or something like that, this one you're supposed to look at it as a popular review, so there's a specific kind of writing that entails that you'll be looking up when you do all the stuff that's in green here. So that will help you make sure that your topic is clear and specific also. So for example, writing a review, you're basically arguing whether somebody else should go see the movie or shouldn't go see the movie. So your topic will need to reflect that. So from the assignment sheet, you can get a lot of information that will help you narrow down what your topic might be and how you might go about doing it. So, knowing that prompt and what you're being asked to do, probably step one that you should make sure you really, really understand fundamentally before you do any further steps. All right, well, this was your first taste of our turkey that we are making this November through our web series. Hopefully we picked out the right turkey for you and you found it helpful. Stay tuned next week. We're going to talk about how to prepare the turkey before you actually start cooking it.